Hello, and welcome everybody to part 3 in our Getting Started in Graphic Design series. My name is Nick, and it's my job to help you start from zero in graphic design to being able to produce quality items. So, without further ado, let's get going, right? So, first video, we talked about analog stuff like this right here, like, notebooks and pencils, pens, rulers, like that kind of stuff, like just stuff where you can like get ideas from here to then here, which is like the very first step of where you want to start creating. You don't want to sit down directly at the computer. You want to start hand to paper, and we talked about that in a bit of detail, and you can check out the first video, which is linked down below. Secondly, we talked about design resources. We talked about typography, talked about AIGA, talked about color harmony right here, which are all resources to help you craft an educated idea for your clients. Again, link right on down below. So now that we've talked about the resources and we talked about the manual tools to get started, today we're going to talk about tech. This kind of stuff right here. So essentially what we're talking about is design has gone from a analog process where you start off with a physical thing that you take to a person who then sets this stuff up, various copiers or typesetters, whatever it may be, and then produces out the item that you need to be done. So if it was like a lot of text, you would take it to a typesetter. That's what the name came from, and they would lay out all of your text, all of that stuff, space it out for you, all of that, and then they would run it through these machines that would output it. Well, now in the digital age, that stuff is almost non-existent. Like there's art projects where it's necessary and like you want that manual feel, but as fast as life happens today, everything happens digitally. So you want it to go from your computer to whatever output resource. I don't know. Relax. Output. Why am I struggling with that? You want to start from your computer, go to your output, and then into your client's hand as a deliverable or to a magazine or poster or whatever it is that you're creating, right? I will use a lot of print references because I focus mainly on print and logo design. So without further ado, some of the main things that you want to focus on is the spec of the machine that you're going to be using, your computer, right? You don't want to go less than 8 gigs of memory and 500 gigs of a hard drive. I'll tell you why. This is specifically for just design. If you're doing video, you're probably going to want to bump up that RAM a little bit because crunching video can be a little taxing on your machine, but 8 gigs is a really nice place to live. You don't want to go less than that because a lot of times with designers, and Adobe even, I think you can get away with 4 gigs of RAM, I believe, but you can, for one project at a time, if you're only going to use Illustrator and nothing else at all, that might be okay using 4 gigs. But if you're running multiple applications, which you most likely will be doing as a graphic artist, because you're going to have, for example, if you're setting up a photo with text on it and you might be laying this out in Photoshop, right? Well, then you're going to have your Photoshop open, and then say you want to edit the photo. Yes, you can do it in Photoshop, but in my opinion, the right way would be to do it in Lightroom. So you're going to pop open Lightroom to edit to make your edits in there, and then you're going to pop it back over to Photoshop. Well, if you only have limited resources to get from that, your machine's going to chug a bit. So you want to stick with the 8 gigs, which is not high at all. I mean, you can find 8 gigs of RAM on the computer pretty readily. It's not difficult to find that at all today. The 500 gigs of hard drive space is so that you have somewhere for you to archive these files for your clients, because what happens inevitably is that you will be working on something and then you'll deliver it and slapping fives, drinks at the club, and like it's all good. Well, then 6 months later your client's like, hey, we need you to make this minor change that we didn't notice before. Well, you need somewhere to store all of these things, so you want a bigger hard drive to be able to do that, especially if you're dealing with photos, because photos can eat your hard drive alive. You also want to get some external hard drives so that you can archive these things, Sharpie it, throw like dates, like blah blah blah, like A through Z, like be organized. If you start off organized, you'll always be organized. You don't want to be doing this for a year and then realize, you know what, I should alphabetize this stuff. Also, you want to be looking at no less than a 22-inch monitor. I say that because you want, like, say you're doing a laptop. I use a Surface as my main machine, right? I use a Surface because it allows me to be ultra mobile. I can use it as a tablet. I can do edits with just a pen in my hand. And then if I'm out somewhere at a cafe or something like that, I can type up an email, get back home, hook it into the dock, hook it up to my external monitor, and now I have a large thing to look at, monitor, whatever you want to call it, screen. It's not your computer because there's no brains in it, so don't call it that because people will laugh at you. But you have something large to look at, and that's easier on your eyes. Also have good lighting around you, but you want that larger monitor, or you go bigger if you can. Again, this is for beginners, so 22 inches for a beginner I think is just fine. I mean, if you can afford a 27, go with it. If you can afford a 32, go with it. But if you're beginning, you're probably not going to be dealing with things where you're going to really need a 32-inch monitor. Just my thought. But also keep in mind when you're looking for these things, the RGB or Adobe RGB space, sRGB. I don't know if it's Adobe sRGB or Adobe RGB. I just look for the RGB color gamut and how much of that is covered. I try to find 100. If you're looking for affordability, I wouldn't go less than 80% on your first one, because what that basically means is that all of the colors that Adobe can produce, that monitor can display that percentage of those colors. So 100% means that you can produce any color that you can produce in Adobe. If you have an 80% RGB, then it covers 80% of the Adobe color space. That's mainly important to your larger clients where they may have a color that's outside of the 80% that is specific to their brand that you cannot shy away from. Like, it has to be this exact color because that is their identity. Starting out, on the other hand, you're creating these things, so like you'll be fine there, and then as it's time to upgrade, then it's time to upgrade. Price points for all these things vary greatly. Price generally goes hand in hand as far as monitors with quality, but again, the amount of Adobe RGB space that's covered and the size of it are paramount over your price tag. If you find one that's $100 and it covers 100 Adobe RGB, that's your thing. If you find one that's $1,000 and it covers 80%, well, now you gotta like dig in to find out what are the differences there. Second on this topic is the age-old Mac versus PC discussion, right? My opinion is go whatever works best for you. If you are a Mac user, stick with it because there's zero learning curve with using something that you already know how to use, right? If you're a PC user, stick with it. Again, there's no learning curve with using what you already know how to use. There are slight advantages with Mac if you're doing video, because I have seen where video editing through Adobe Premiere Pro will take longer than Final Cut Pro, which is exclusive to Macs, when you're exporting video. As a beginner, you're probably not pumping out so much video where that's really going to be an issue, but you know, if you are working with other people in the project and they're exporting and then making edits and then exporting again and you're still exporting, you know, that could be a challenge for you. But you know, for things that I do in Premiere Pro. There are advantages to that, which Adobe is agnostic in that fact. I mean, you can use it on Mac and PC. Final Cut Pro is only exclusive to Mac, right? iMacs, I mean, it's again like they're tools. Like in my opinion, they're tools. They're people that are in love with this versus that. That doesn't make a ton of sense to me because they're tools in the end. Like if you have a Craftsman hammer or a DeWalt hammer, they're both hammers, right? Like is this Craftsman hammer better because it's Craftsman? Probably not. There's probably unique qualities to it over the DeWalt or vice versa. I mean, they're still just tools, right? They're just tools. In the end, what I want you to learn is that these are tools. Don't get stuck in one brand versus the other because you start limiting yourself and what you're able to create because you've painted yourself into a corner with this brand or that. I'm using a Canon camera. That's mainly because of ease of use, the menu system, and the glass that I can use on them. It's nothing against Nikon. It's just the company I was working for used Canon, and I got thrown into a photography role. I learned how to use it. It made sense to me, and here I am now. You know, I have friends that have used Nikons. Seems a little different. It's almost like the iPhone versus Android argument. I mean, like neither of them are the wrong way or the right way. It's just a different way. For me, that's what makes sense. I'm a PC user, Canon user, and an iPhone user. It's fine. Like seriously, it's okay. These are all tools. These are all tools in my tool belt. See what I did there? Like tool. No. Where we're going to be using on this channel is going to be Adobe. Adobe Creative Cloud is design standard, industry standard software for many different sets. Okay, Photoshop, Illustrator, Lightroom, InDesign, and Acrobat. Those are going to be the main programs that we use here. Um, the reason for that is because if you're going to have somewhere to start, you're going to want somewhere to start that everybody else uses. When I say industry standard, whenever you say you take these skills and what you learn, say you're going to school and you want to get a job doing these with either an agency or with a company that's hiring for a graphic designer, chances are they are looking for someone that has experience in using these programs specifically. Yes, there's a disclaimer for people in the comments, but there's this program that you can do this and you can do that. That's fine. I acknowledge those programs. If that's what you're more comfortable with, more power to you. But this video probably isn't for you as well. And if you're making a comment, then you have to agree that this video isn't for you because we're talking about beginners and you're talking about using programs that are non-standard. And the only way that you do that is if you're at a level that's so far exceeding beginner that you just use whatever program that you want to use. So it's okay. We're friends here. Everybody, digital hug. Digital hug. Okay. Back into it. So we're talking about Adobe because these are industry standard programs. And as I said before, employers are looking for you to have experience in these programs. To get them, you just go to adobe.com, sign up for the subscription. For the full license, it's about $50 a month. There are like pieces and parts subscriptions that start like around $10 a month. I think if you just get Photoshop, I think it's like $10 a month, something like that. I could be wrong. Shame on me for not doing research before talking about it, but just check it out. I mean, it's definitely worth it, especially if you're ready for this next level in design. So now that we've talked about the analog tools and the book tools and the digital tools and the external drive tools and the software tools, congratulations, we made it through our very first series on the channel. Give yourself a round of applause. Dope. Well done. Good luck to you all. In our next discussion, we're going to be talking about design inspiration. Like, where do you come up with the ideas to create something amazing for that client? The inspiration is all around us, actually, and we'll talk more about it in the next video. See you later, guys. Like it if you liked it. Dislike it if you disliked it. Be nice to each other. There's not enough of that going on in the world. That said, peace.